World War I ended with millions dying. Why? Because commanders could not communicate effectively. That war was decided by mass, by a sheer volume of everything, how many men there was, by the artillery, by tanks. By the next war, the commanders knew it was to be faster, more mobile, and it was going to be impossible to command without the radio. Real battles were fought in both World War I and World War II through communication. World War I showed how the lack of communication created problems. World War II brought about a new problem, a problem that stemmed with being able to hide communication. In the early 1930s, the Germans, they thought they had perfected it by using a machine called the Enigma machine. The technology was not new to them, it had been around. But the idea behind Enigma was to use mathematics inside machinery to hide what they were doing and what they were saying. This story isn't about Enigma being a magical box. It's not a story about some genius myth. It's a story about how human language betrayed the machine that was built to hide it. After World War I, warfare changed. Armies became mobile. Navies operated across entire oceans. Commands were issued by radio, and anything sent by radio can be intercepted. World War I showed what happened when command couldn't keep up with the movement. Germany needed a new way to transmit orders openly without revealing intent. In the early 1920s, the commercial encryption device called the Enigma appeared. By the 1930s, the German military had adopted and heavily modified it. By the time World War II began in 1939, Enigma was everywhere. Army units, Air Force operations, and most critically, the German Navy. At a glance, Enigma looks simple. You press a letter, a different letter appears. But instead, the machine, the path, was anything but simple. Electric current passed through a plug board, then through a stack of rotating wheels called rotors, then through a reflector, and then back again through the same rotors. Each rotor contained scrambled internal wiring, and after every key press, the rotor stepped. That meant the encryption changed continuously. The same letter typed twice in a row would almost never encrypt the same way twice. One important quirk: a letter could never encrypt to itself. At the time, this was considered a massive strength. To read an Enigma message, both sides needed identical settings. Which rotors were used, the order of those rotors, the starting positions, the ring settings, and the plug board swaps at the front. All of that mattered. Miss even one, and the message stayed unreadable. The number of possible configurations was enormous. By the standard of 1930, Enigma was considered effectively unbreakable, and for years it was. Enigma was not first broken by Britain. It was broken in 1932 in Poland, at the Polish Cipher Bureau. 3 mathematicians reconstructed Enigma's internal wiring using mathematics alone. They didn't steal a machine. They didn't rely on luck. They treated Enigma as a logical system, a logical problem, a mathematical problem. By 1938, they had built mechanical aids to help decrypt messages. In July of 1939, just weeks before Germany invaded Poland, the Polish team was able to share everything they had with British and French intelligence. When Poland fell, the work didn't disappear, it simply moved. At Bletchley Park, British cryptanalysts scaled the Polish work. Figures like Alan Turing and Gordon Welchman and many others helped design machines called bombs, which could test Enigma settings far faster than humans ever could at the time. By early 1940, British intelligence was regularly reading German Army and Air Force Enigma traffic. This intelligence operation was given the code name Ultra. Very few people knew it existed, very few. But the most important versions of Enigma, the German naval Enigma, remained secure even longer. It wasn't until 1941, after captured codebooks and equipment were recovered from German U-boats, that the naval traffic could be read. that moment changed the war. The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest continuous battle of World War II. There were over 72,000 casualties and over 3,500 ships lost in this battle. Before Enigma was broken, Allied convoys were hunted relentlessly. There were setbacks. In 1942, new rotors temporarily locked out Allies again. But by 1943, decryption was restored. From that point on, the balance shifted permanently. Most historians agree that breaking Enigma shortened the war in Europe by at least 2 years. Millions of lives were saved because of this. Millions. Not by weapons, but by information. So let's talk a little bit about ciphertext, and what Enigma was hiding, but also what Turing and Welchman and Project Ultra was trying to actually uncover. So let's pretend that this is intercepted radio traffic. We don't know the key, we don't know the language for sure, and we don't even know how it was encrypted. The important part here is to look at the first problem in cryptography. And that's, it isn't reading the message, it's figuring out how it was encrypted. So one important element here is the key length, the key that was used to encrypt this message. So we need to determine if it is what's called polyalphabetic or monoalphabetic. If this is polyalphabetic, the key length matters more than the key itself, because the key length determines how structure is hidden. So let's look at this a little differently here. I'm going to take this. We're going to make some columns. I'll do this quickly. Okay. So this is assuming that the key length is 4. So I have 4 columns. If the key length is 4, every 4th letter uses the same alphabet. So polyalphabetic versus monoalphabetic. Monoalphabetic, you have your alphabet, and it is very up and down in its frequency of distribution. And that can make things very easy to discover. Where polyalphabetic, it tends to make it a little bit more even. And this is very important when it comes to Enigma, because Enigma was polyalphabetic. So assuming, our test here is that the key is 4 long. Each column is now a simple substitution cipher. So let's really let that sink in. Now we know that this is more simple to determine. Now we can score each column. We score each column by using what's called the index of coincidence. It's essentially, in simple terms here, there's more to it, but is the number of letters times the number of letters minus 1 divided by the total number of letters in the entire message times the total number of letters minus 1. By doing this, it gives us a score when we score each column. Now, completely random, so noise is going to land pretty close to 0.038. something that is more like human language, something that's going to sound like a letter that would repeat, or a phrase. It's going to land higher, maybe around 0.65. That's kind of the baseline. So when we run this through, we don't need the exact value. We only care which way it moves. So up, if that score moves up, it means structure. It might mean language. If it goes down, then we know that our key length guess is wrong because it lands closer to noise. This is exactly what the bombs automated. They didn't solve the message. They tested assumptions. The rotor order. The rotor order, its position, and the plugboard constraints. And then they asked one question over and over and over and over and over and over. The question that was asked by the machine was, does this key produce something less random than noise? If it did, they were able to find that this guess was better than the noise. And that is what gave them an edge. Once the bomb device narrowed the key space, humans then took over. They applied the daily key to the cipher message. And then the message could be decrypted cleanly. Enigma wasn't weak. The machine wasn't weak. The mathematics definitely were not weak. What failed was the assumption that human language could be hidden perfectly inside a mechanical system. Language repeats. Operators develop habits, messages follow a structure, and mathematics will notice that structure. Breaking Enigma created a new problem. Once you can read the enemy's messages, you can't act like you can read the enemy's messages. Because the moment Germany suspected Enigma was compromised, the advantage would have vanished. Ultra came with rules, brutal rules. Sometimes convoys were rerouted quietly. Sometimes they weren't rerouted at all. Not because the Allies didn't know, but because acting too perfectly would reveal the source. Ultra intelligence was filtered. Commanders were given just enough information to justify decisions through plausible explanations. The truth had to stay buried. The Battle of the Atlantic wasn't won in a single moment. Early in the war, the Allies were losing ships faster than they could replace them. Britain was running out of food, fuel, and time. Once naval Enigma was broken, and it was kept broken, the tide began to turn. Convoys stopped blundering themselves into ambushes. U-boats began sailing into traps instead. By 1943, German submarine losses were catastrophic. And that mattered far beyond the ocean. Atlantic security made everything else possible. Troops moving to North Africa, supplies flowing to the Soviet Union, the buildup for D-Day. No Atlantic victory meant no invasion of Europe. Alan Turing and the countless other people that worked on Project Ultra, they didn't defeat Enigma simply by guessing secrets. They defeated it by finding what guess was simply better than the noise. That's the real legacy of Enigma and Project Ultra. Luckily, these lessons didn't end in 1945, and they carry to today, where our technology and what we know is influenced by great thinkers back in the 1930s and 40s.